Moving right along, alternative energy is really chic right now. Wind power, solar power, even so-called clean coal power, and I have real issues with so-called uh, coal power, clean coal power,
Hmm.
because from what I've heard, it's just not true. You're shooting it back down underground and under the earth, and you don't know what it's doing there either. The byproduct, but how does nuclear research and technology address challenges like climate change and reliable fuel sources, like what we think of as the alternative
Sure. I think,
energy producing?
when I first decided that I was going to pursue a career in nuclear engineering as an undergraduate student so many years ago, I was really drawn to this technology because I saw it as a way to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. Even at that time, while climate change was not an issue, it seems really it seems like a poor use of those very scarce resources, which have so many other uses within our lives.
For instance,
They manufacture plastics and our reliance on them for transportation fuels. So the use of those resources to produce electricity when there are so many other options available seemed like not such a smart thing to do to me. And I was really attracted to nuclear energy because it actually is an easy way to offset directly the way we use fossil fuels today to generate electricity. In my view, nuclear energy is an important part of the mix of energy technologies that are going to enable us to go to a greener, cleaner electric generation mode in the United States.
well, so and hence that would help the climate change issue, help address that.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think the use of nuclear energy is to offset the large base load generation capacity, the generation capability, the electric use that's there every day, 24 hours a day, having all of our computers running, using the telephone networks, street lights, all these things that are on all the time, large industrial complex plants that operate 24 hours a day. Using nuclear energy to provide electricity to those activities in the U.S., and then relying on a combination of wind and solar to meet the peaking loads, because those are actually match well to when our peaks fall during the day, is our best path forward at this point.
But now, what are your current interests in terms of your research?
Current. So I think a lot of the focus in nuclear science technology right now are on two different paths. One is on using our fuel more responsibly, so that we can rely on nuclear energy as a resource for many, many years. And the second path is on non-power application uses. And one of those that's really important to me is the development of desalination facilities in regions of the world where water is a critical resource, and in order to provide potable water to the population of the world.
Now, wait, can you back up and say that again?
So I think nuclear technology can be a key enabler to the deployment of desalination technologies around the world to ensure that water is available to those places in the world where water is currently scarce.
But now, why would it be better than something else, for instance?
Well, one of the primary need for developing a desalination facility is a lot of energy, a lot of process heat, so that you can heat water to high temperatures, and the separation processes that are used, which are typically rely on membrane separation processes like the things you put on your faucet at home. But they operate much more efficiently at high temperature and high pressure, and you can make a lot more clean water from seawater, clean fresh water from seawater in that way. That need for high temperature and high pressure are really match well with the way that nuclear power plants operate in that when you're generating electricity with a nuclear plant, we're creating high pressure, high temperature steam that drives a turbine. That same process can be used to drive a desalination plant.
But you think nuclear energy is better for that
because your alternatives are to burn fossil fuels to provide that process heat and the electricity needed to drive those plants.
well, But so your current research is focusing on the desalination.
No, so that's one area where I do work, and my other research interest is in really using the fuel more efficiently. I should maybe clarify that my personal research interest is in the development of advanced simulation capabilities that harness these massive supercomputers that you hear about occasionally. So my goal is to capture all of those technology developments in that area and enable engineers to use those new tools to design better facilities and better nuclear plants, better technologies for the future. That's really where the bleeding edge comes from.
Okay.
I kind of a conduit from the scientist over to the applied engineer, so that those good ideas are applied to real life.
Well, David Poynter, thank you very much for being on the show. I just hope that that perhaps talking about this has eased people's fears, because I think a lot of us have those images of like how dangerous and unstable and toxic nuclear energy is, when in fact, as you've just explained, it's already providing a great, safely apparently.
It is. Well, we've had a really good history of safety with the plants in the United States, with the demonstrations of advanced technologies that have been applied since 3 Mile Island, changes in safety culture, the development of organizations that are responsible for ensuring that each nuclear plant provides information to all the others so that they understand how they're operating, they learn from each other. This has led to a culture where safety information is shared openly.
So like with China or any place in South America or anyone else developing a nuclear facilities?
Actually, yes. So there are, within the United States, there are organizations that are responsible for communications just between the plants here. There are world nuclear organizations as well. So information is shared through the World Nuclear Association, the International Atomic Energy Agency.
Because we don't want another Chernobyl.
So there are worldwide databases that have led to major changes around the world, and one of those is with the plants like the one at Chernobyl, which were not designed with electric generation in mind, but they were part of a weapons program. So that public safety was really not a concern when those plants were developed. But as a consequence of this change in safety culture, many of those plants have been shut down. The ones that are operating, the few that are operating today, operate much differently in a much different safety mode than would have been acceptable at the time of Chernobyl.
This is going to sound like a very ignorant question, but when we hear about reports of foreign countries developing nuclear capabilities, could you say, well, no, we're really just building a plant to generate electricity, and be faking people? But when they're really doing it for weapons,
there are very telltale signs when developing nuclear energy programs. What they give away what the intent of those programs are, and a big key to that is the degree of technology you're developing to separate nuclear materials, so that if you're developing that capability and you're purchasing the materials needed to do that, it's very a telltale sign that the International Atomic Energy Agency picks up on very readily. So that those countries you hear about them because they've tripped across one of those boundaries.
Well, thank you again, Dave Poynter, for setting our minds at ease about nuclear power. Hey, everybody, we're using it a lot here in Chicago, and we don't even know it most of the time. I very much appreciate you coming on the show, Dave.
Sure.
Thanks
for having me.
Next up, Michael James will be talking to Rus Bradburd and about his new book, the biography of basketball legend Nolan Richardson. You're listening to WLUW 88.7 at Loyola University's Community Radio. We will be right back after this break.